Social media engagement. Where should your brand actually show up in 2026 and beyond? Imagine this. You're posting every single day. You're writing captions, you're choosing hashtags, scheduling content, and the silence is deafening. No likes, no shares, or very little of those. No comments. Just you and the algorithm staring at each other. Here's the brutal truth. It's not your content that's the problem. It's where you're showing up. Most brands are fighting for attention on platforms that were never built for their audience. They're shouting into the wrong room. And now, in this year and beyond, that mistake is costing businesses real money, real time, and real opportunity.
Hello, great to see you tuning into yet another Just Add Social podcast. Our resident social media expert is Clive Roach, and he is the host for this episode.
Thanks, Aria, for that introduction. And this is another episode of the Just Add Social podcast, the podcast where we strip away the noise and hand you the data and give you strategies that actually move the needle. It's one of my favorite phrases to use. So today we're diving deep into one of the most important questions every brand creator and marketer needs to answer right now, which is, which social media platforms are actually driving engagement and which ones are quietly draining your energy? Well, we have got some new benchmark data from Emplifi's 2026 social media benchmark reports and my own real-world insights on top of that, and latest analysis and the Just Add Social podcast perspective to tie it all together. So in this podcast, we have a way to describe how advanced the topic is. So this helps you to understand if it's you, the listener, that is probably best suited to act on the insights in the podcast, or whether you should get an outsourced person or another colleague who we suggest is better skilled for this task. So we provide that number up front in the podcast description and at the start of each podcast. So this enables you to have that heads up as to the depth of detail, so you can decide which podcast is best for you to learn from based on your personal view of your own social media savviness. So the scale is from 1 to 10, with 1 being beginners and 10 is advanced. So Aria, what is the social savvy scale number for this podcast?
Thanks, Clive. The social savvy score is level 8 in the advanced level. What does this mean then? Well, if you have expert level knowledge of social media marketing and is capable of innovation and optimization of campaign strategy and tactics, then we think you are at the right level of skills to take full advantage of the suggestions from this podcast.
Thank you. Indeed, level 8 advanced. And we don't do that many that are at this level, but this one certainly is. So now let's go into chapter 1. And chapter 1 is called The Engagement Illusion: Why Follower Count is Lying to You.
Chapter 1, Just Add Social podcast.
Let's start with the elephant in the room. For many years, many long years, I've been in this business and dealing with social media marketing. Brands have been obsessed, managers have been obsessed with follower counts. Now, you know what I mean. So more followers equals more success, right? Well, that's what we were led to believe way back then, but we're more educated now, right? That's what we believed before, but that's wrong. This year and going forward, follower count is arguably one of the most misleading metrics you can chase. And the data backs this up. So according to Emplifi's 2026 Benchmark Insights report, engagement rate not reach, not impressions, and not followers is the true North Star metric for understanding whether your content is actually connecting with real human beings, right? And here's where it gets interesting. The platforms with the largest audiences are not necessarily the platforms delivering the highest engagement rates. In fact, the opposite is often true. So I remember when I was starting the social media for Philips Healthcare, we'd just done some legal action to grab the domain, which is now used by Royal Philips till this day. But then it was a cyber squad that had it. And so when I started the social media work, I used analytics so much because I needed to show people the effect of what we were doing. And our biggest competitor at the time was on a massive platform and a massive follower base. And obviously we were just starting in social. Obviously we were a big company offline, but social online, we were just young, just starting. And I'd always use that engagement rate metric because the way that I created PowerPoints to show management at that time was to show that the little planet like Mercury and the big planet Jupiter. And I said, look, this is follower count, but look at the engagement figures. And we had consistently higher engagement figures than the biggest company on social media for healthcare at that time. So this is why I know from personal experience that tracking engagement rate gives you the best metric in terms of understanding how your content is performing, right? So think of it, and here's another analogy. So think of it this way. You could be speaking to a stadium of 100,000 people, but if nobody's listening, if nobody's reacting, if nobody's sharing what you said with their friends, and does it actually matter at all? So compare that to a room of, say, 500 people who are nodding their heads, asking questions, pulling out their phones to screenshot your slide. You know what it's like at conferences, and texting their colleagues saying, you have to hear this person. Which room would you rather be in? Right? That's a great example of social proof as well, right? So that's the difference between vanity metrics and engagement metrics. And it's the core insight that should be reshaping your entire social strategy right now.
Clive, that is a brilliant analogy. Like it.
Thank you for the feedback, Aria. I always value your feedback. So clearly the brands winning in social this year in 2026 are not necessarily the biggest brands. They're the most relevant brands to their specific audience on the right platform. So before we talk about which platforms win, we need to agree on one thing: with measuring what matters, with measuring engagement, with measuring connection, and with measuring action. Are we good? Aria, what is chapter 2 about?
Chapter 2 is called Platform by Platform, the 2026 Engagement Scoreboard.
Chapter 2, Just Add Social Podcast.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Aria, for that. Indeed, we are in chapter 2. So, all right, let's get into the numbers. Platform by platform, no fluff, just facts. With context, so you know what to actually do with this information. So, first up, Instagram. Instagram continues to be a powerhouse for brand engagement in 2026. According to Emplifi's benchmark data, Instagram remains one of the top performing platforms for brand interactions, particularly for visual first industries. So here we think about fashion, food, beauty, travel, fitness, and lifestyle. So that's what we can understand, right? But here's what's critical to understand though. Instagram Reels are dramatically outperforming static posts when it comes to reach and engagement. So if you're still primarily posting square images, and they do change the size of the square now and again, our Instagram friends, and calling it a strategy, you are leaving serious engagement on the table here. So the algorithm in 2026 is heavily favoring video, short form, punchy, value-driven video. Instagram is rewarding creators and brands who lean into that format. Carousels are also performing well. Note that. So particularly for educational content, step-by-step guides, and storytelling formats where you want to keep people swiping. So I follow the Instagram leader, and he's often posting updates about new changes to the algorithm and how to make effective use of the platform. And these are the things that he's saying. So the Just Add Social podcast take on all of this. Instagram is a non-negotiable item to use for visual brands. But for your content mix needs to be at least 60% video if you want the algorithm working for you rather than against you. Okay, next up, let's look at Facebook. Now, I remember being asked this 6 years ago even, when apparently Facebook was dying. Now, what thing are you going to tell me about Facebook? Surely it's still not relevant now. It's not relevant, right? And all this kind of stuff. So yes, the data might surprise you here. Facebook's overall engagement rate per post has declined. That's true. From its peak many years ago. But here's what the benchmarks reveal, that Facebook groups and Facebook video content are generating significant engagement, particularly for community-driven brands, local businesses, and B2C companies targeting audiences above 35. So I was involved in lots of setting up of community groups, industry community groups across Philips and Signify, where we were targeting B2B primarily, but it still also works for B2C, some big B2C groups there. Some lovely case studies about the groups and communities that work in Facebook. If you dig those out, you'll see it's still a great place to be. So Emplifi's data shows that brands who are using Facebook strategically and not just cross-posting Instagram content and hoping for the best, that those brands are still seeing meaningful interaction rates. So the key word there is strategically. Facebook rewards conversation. It rewards community. It rewards content that generates comments and shares, not just passive likes. If your brand can create content that sparks discussion, asks questions, or taps into community identity, then Facebook still has a serious value in your digital mix. Okay, great. Now, the one that we really do have to talk about is TikTok, of course. So TikTok is the wild card in a way. It's the disruptor platform. So this platform rewrote the rules and continues to be. So this year and going forward, TikTok continues to deliver some of the highest organic reach of any platform, particularly the brands willing to embrace authentic native content. We're going to talk about that. So here's the thing about TikTok that most brands still get wrong. TikTok is not a place to run polished advertising. It's not a place to repurpose your TV commercial or your Instagram campaign. So I experienced this when TikTok first came out and the corporates were like, yeah, you just repost stuff there. We've got to get a foothold there. TikTok audiences are finely tuned radars for content that feels inauthentic or overly produced. So, you see that when there's actually a police station, a Dutch police station, which created a TikTok account, and you see these guys dancing or whatever. But there is a nice point. You can quite clearly see a tactical approach there. So they got it right. So what TikTok rewards is authenticity, in entertainment, and trending participation, right? So if you really know what's trending, and I did a social post on the Social Jedi series about how to use the Trend app. But of course, there's lots of different aspects and areas in TikTok that you can delve into to find out about what you can post about. So the trending one is the famous one, but there's also the content gap. There's a location there where you can actually get what's bubbling under, and if you can create content from that list, then and you do it really well, then you'll be part of that breaking revolution of brands and creators that are creating content for something that TikTok anticipates people are looking for. So brands that show personality, that get behind the camera, that jump on sounds and trends and challenges, those are the brands that are building massive, loyal communities on TikTok right now. So the benchmark data confirms that TikTok engagement rates are for brands creating native content that remains exceptionally high compared to other platforms. So that's what we see in the data. So what's the Just Add Social podcast perspective on this one? So TikTok is highest rewarding platform, but also the highest effort. I used to say that about YouTube many years ago. So if you have the capacity to create genuine platform native content consistently, then TikTok should absolutely be in your strategy. It's not for everyone. So if you're going to half-heartedly cross-post from Instagram, then maybe not bother. Okay, so now let's look at LinkedIn. LinkedIn are really trying hard. We've seen them make some very big moves recently, like removing clickable links in bios and all kinds of stuff. So they're kind of like the dark horse right now in terms of the engagement area. So LinkedIn has had a kind of a glow up in 2026, to call it that. A lot of people still haven't fully processed it. So for B2B brands, professional services, consultants and coaches and thought leaders, LinkedIn engagement rates have been climbing steadily. The platform has evolved from a digital CV repository, which yes, that's how we all saw it back in the day, now into a genuine content ecosystem where ideas, opinions, and expertise drive serious engagements. This is really good. Now, long-form posts, carousels, and personal storytelling and video content are all performing strongly on LinkedIn right now. And here's a unique advantage that LinkedIn offers: the intent of the audience. So people on LinkedIn are in a professional mindset. They've opened to learning, to connecting, to buying solutions to business problems. And in the stats I used to do, my previous workplace, I used to work out for which topic when people are most likely to engage. It's really interesting on LinkedIn to see that. So work that out with your social listening platform. So if your brand serves businesses or professionals and you're not treating LinkedIn as a primary platform this year, you are generally going to be missing out. And finally, YouTube, that I did drop a little hint about that before. YouTube is the long game, if you like. The long game is still paying off in this respect. YouTube's position this year is fascinating because it operates kind of differently from every other platform we've discussed so far. Yes, it's a search engine as much as it's a social platform. Content on YouTube has longevity, right? A video you publish today can still be driving views and engagement 2 years from now. So my best example is I did a video about how to buy some accessories to make the Apple AirPods not fall out of your ears. And that consistently is one of my top videos for engagement on my platform for years. Still people looking for that solution, right? So for brands that can commit to video production and specifically to educational, tutorial, or entertainment-based content, then YouTube represents one of the best, valuable long-term assets that you can build. And we're going to start with Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Just Add Social Podcast.
Okay, Chapter 3, the content formula. What's actually driving engagement in 2026? Okay, so now we know the platforms, but knowing where to show up is only half the equation. The other half, arguably the more important half, is knowing what to post. Because here's the reality. You can be on every single right platform, posting every single day, and still completely fail to generate any engagement at all if your content isn't built around the right principles. Okay. So let's talk about what the data tells us that is actually working in 2026. And we're going to go through these one by one. Let's start with number one. Video dominates, but context determines the format, right? So across virtually every major platform, video content is outperforming static content for engagement. This is not new news. Years ago, I was preaching this at Philips. But the degree to which it's true in 26 is more pronounced than ever. However, and this is important, not all video is created equal. So short form video under 60 seconds performs exceptionally well for awareness and initial engagement. Long form video performs better for depth, trust, building, and conversion. Not saying that you can't get conversion of a 60-second video, but it's not necessarily the best way of doing it. You have to have a really powerful 60-second video to get conversions from it. The smart strategy is using both. So short form to attract and engage, and long form to convert and retain. Now, number two, authenticity over production value. This has been true for years. The benchmark consistently shows that audiences are responding more to genuine human content than to highly polished corporate feeling content. This doesn't mean you should post blurry, badly lit videos. It means the energy of your content, the personality, the honesty, the willingness to show the human side behind the brand matters more than having a Hollywood production budget. And I used to use a local film company. I used to call it two guys and a camera, who actually really get that non-polished feel, but actually looks very professional. So you can do it without having a Hollywood production budget, indeed. So brands that are winning on social right now are the ones that feel real. They share behind-the-scenes content, they respond to comments, they take positions, and they have a point of view. And of course, looking at the iPhone, I've got the iPhone 17 Pro. It's a fantastic device. The only thing that I would add is to get something that you can hold it so your fingers don't appear in the... There's a certain way of holding a phone, but the iPhone 17 Pro is the latest one, or any iPhone Pro that's coming. They're great devices. You can take really professional video from that. Number three, consistency beats going viral. So every brand wants to go viral, of course, but the data tells us a different story, and we're all about data in this podcast. So what actually builds lasting engagement? That's what we're looking at. So consistent, frequent posting, even if the individual posts don't explode, it builds this algorithmic favor, the audience habit, and the brand familiarity over time. The brands with the highest sustained engagement rates are not the ones chasing the viral moments. They're the ones showing up reliably, delivering value consistently, and building genuine community. Okay, number four here, the last point I want to make here is conversation first content. That's not easy, right? So engagement is a two-way street, look at it that way. And the brands that are seeing the best engagement metrics are the ones designing content specifically to generate responses. So how do you do this? You can ask questions, you can create polls, the post content that takes a position that people want to agree or disagree with. And also remember to respond to every comment, especially in the early hours after posting, when the algorithm is watching closely to decide how widely to distribute your content. So that's always true, that little sweet spot after you've posted. So the Just Add Social podcast principle here on all of this is that every piece of content you create should have a clear answer to this question. Why would someone comment on this? If you can't answer that, rethink the content before you post it. And that is a big question to ask yourself. I would print it out and put it over your desk or on your computer or put it somewhere. That question, let me repeat that. Why would somebody comment on this? If you can't answer that, then rethink the content before you post it. Okay, now let's move on to chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Just Add Social Podcast.
So some more stats here. This chapter is called Industry Benchmarks. How does your brand stack up? So here's a question. I was asked constantly this question for many years at Philips. Is my engagement rate good? Right? That question. And the honest answer is it depends entirely on your industry, your platform, your audience size, and your department position in your company, for example. So compare what you have been getting over the past year and the other teams in your company and benchmarks, for example. So this is where benchmark data really becomes incredibly valuable, because without benchmarks, you're kind of flying blind, right? You might think that 1.2% engagement rate is terrible when actually for your industry and the platform, it's above average. Same thing's true the other way. You might get 3% engagement rate, and that's good, but when you compare it to your competitors, they're averaging 6%, let's say. So Emplifi's 2026 benchmark report gives us some crucial context here.
Clive, can I interrupt here? I just want to highlight that the link to the Emplifi's 2026 benchmark report is in the podcast description. That's it.
No, thank you. I think it's good that you remind everyone that that report is great. And in fact, I've posted the infographic of that report onto my Pinterest account. I've pinned it into my Essentials Pinterest board, so you can have a look at it there. But let's just close off this chapter with the Just Add Social podcast recommendation. And it's a very simple one. Know your benchmarks. You know, on my computer, laptop, and I've still got it now, I've got, after every section or topic, I have a benchmarks folder. So find the industry-specific data for your category and your primary platforms and set your baseline. Then set your targets based on reality and not wishful thinking. So if you're consistently below benchmark, there's a signal to change your content strategy. If you're at benchmark, that's a signal to push even harder. And if you're above benchmark, well done, but that's a signal to double down on what's working and document it, because you found something valuable. So well done. And I think I always like it when I get into that kind of groove, when I know it's above benchmark. Then it could be things that you're doing, like I'm always posting on Sunday morning, or because you know that works, or I'm posting on Wednesday afternoon, or I'm posting images with text on them, and when I didn't do that, it didn't work. There's always these things that you can document to really understand what's pushing up your performance against benchmarks. Okay, now chapter 5, the platform trap. Why trying to be everywhere is killing your strategy.
Chapter 5, Just Add Social Podcast.
This I've come across a lot. So I want to address something that I see destroying social media strategies for brands of all sizes. And I call it the platform trap. So the platform trap is what happens when a brand decides they need to be on every platform. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest, X, Threads, Snapchat. All of them, all at once. Now, the logic seems sound. You know, on the surface, yeah, you've got to be on these platforms. But more platforms equals more reach, right? That's what we used to think, or some of us. Well, that's wrong. And here's why. Social media is not a numbers game of platforms. It's a quality game of relevance and consistency. And when you spread your team, your budget, and your creative energy across 7 or 8 platforms simultaneously, you don't get 7 times the results. Now, I've proved that many times. right? When a department has said, Clive, here's our thought to go and do this, and I analyze all the numbers and I show that engagement rates. And then I show the engagement rate of a department in the same company that does half as much and gets twice as much engagement rate. So it's really important to look at those benchmarks and to think about that, right? So every platform has its own content format, its own algorithm, its own audience behavior, and its own best posting times, its own tone and culture. So creating genuine, effective content for one platform is a full-time job in a way. And trying to do it authentically across every platform is a recipe for burnout and bad performance everywhere, right? So the data supports a more focused approach. Brands that identify their 2 or 3 highest performing platforms based on where their specific audience is most active and most engaged, and then invest deeply in those platforms, consistently outperform brands that spread themselves thin. So that's it. Okay, so here's the question before we go into chapter 6. How do you choose your platforms? 3 questions you can ask yourself. Number 1, where does your target audience actually spend their time? This is one of the primary things that I use social listening for. When I get a new client, new topic I'm doing, this is the first thing. Not where you think they should be, but where they actually are. What's that phrase? Fish where the fishes are, right? Second question, where does your content type naturally fit? So if you have a visual brand with strong imagery, obviously, Instagram and Pinterest make sense. But if you're a thought leader with complex ideas, then LinkedIn and YouTube make sense for that. Question number 3, where do you have the capacity to show up consistently and authentically? So I used to have this, and I still do have this checklist of 7 things, and it basically answers all these 3 questions. And it kind of makes you feel, after you've done that, after teams have reviewed that, they don't need me to say, you're stretching yourself. They can see it for themselves. So the answer to these particular 3 questions, honestly, if you do that, your platform strategy becomes much clearer. So, in summary, the Just Add Social podcast take on this topic is start with, say, 1 or 2 platforms, master them, really master them, get those engagement rates really looking good, and then only then consider expanding. Okay, so now chapter 6. Now this is the all action plan. This is where it all comes together.
Chapter 6, Just Add Social Podcast.
I'm going to give you an action plan for the next 90 days on social media. This is where you can get your pencil and pen out, and we're going to do an action plan for you, right? So we've covered the data. We've covered the platforms. We've covered the content principle. Now let's make this actionable. Because information without action is just entertainment, right? So I want this podcast episode to actually change what you do. In fact, next week. So here's your 90-day Just Add Social podcast action plan based on everything we've covered in this podcast so far. Days 1 to 30. I suggest an audit and focus. I always like starting with audits. They're painful if you're on the other side of them, but they're okay when you're running them. So start by pulling your analytics across your platforms that you've currently active on. Look at your engagement rates, not your follower counts, though they should be there as well. Not your reach and stuff like that, but your engagement rates should definitely be there. Compare them to the industry benchmarks we've discussed. Identify your top 2 performing platforms. Then, and this takes courage, consider stepping back from the platforms where you're consistently underperforming and where your audience isn't actually engaging at all. It's not just a failure, you've learned from it. It's a strategic focus. I think that I've seen this. I've seen people's faces drop when I do this audit and I bring them back the results. And it's painful, right? But it's important to get long-term success. Okay, now we're moving on. That's day 1 to 30. Now day 31 to 60. Here we're going to rebuild your content mix. So listen up. Based on what the 2026 data tells us, rebuild your content calendar with video as the foundation. I would even say aim for at least 50 to 60% of your content to be video. Short form reels, TikToks, YouTube, shorts, LinkedIn video, you got it there, depending on your chosen platforms, okay? So building conversation starting content. It's not all just about, look at us, this is our gadget, buy it. So include polls, questions, opinion posts, behind the scenes content that invites response. And set a consistency target you can actually maintain. So 3 posts per week, maybe, that are high quality, easily beats 7 posts per week that are poor every single time. And I've seen this consistently when I do audits. Days 61 to 90. Here we go. This is where it starts to really happen, right? So measure, learn, and iterate. So at the 60-day mark, pull your analytics again. What's working, what's not? Where are you seeing genuine engagement growth? Double down on what's working, cut what isn't, and bring that learning into your next 90-day cycle. So then you start again. So this is not a one and done strategy, right? So social media this year and the years coming rewards brands that are constantly learning, constantly adapting, and constantly showing up. So the brands that win are the ones who treat social media as an ongoing conversation and not just an ongoing publishing platform and not a broadcast channel. So that's your action plan. And I think we are now in time for the key takeaway, Aria, if I'm correct.
Get ready for the key takeaway section, Clive. Here you go.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Here's your key takeaway for this podcast. Let me leave you with 3 things I want you to remember from everything we covered today. Number 1, stop chasing followers. Start chasing engagement. Engagement is the metric that actually tells you whether your content is connecting. 2, you don't need to be on every platform. You need to be on the right platforms for your audience. And you need to show up there consistently and authentically. Number 3, video is not optional in 2026 and beyond. It is the language of social media right now. If your brand isn't speaking it fluently, your competitors who are there will eat your lunch. Now, go take action. Review your analytics, identify your platforms, and build your video content strategy. And if you want help or support with that, with strategy, you know where to find me. Go to cliveroach.com and you can contact me on the contact page there. I love this stuff. I love doing audits and social media strategies and getting brands and individuals and creators up and running. Not sure that Aria will be coming along, but we'll see.
Before we go, a quick reminder to please subscribe to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Until next time, keep building, keep showing up, and keep growing. See you in the next episode.
See you all next time. Bye.
And thank you very much. Bye-bye now.